All right. I haven't heard anyone else join us just yet, so I think we'll forge ahead with the three of us. Mary Linehouse from CDC is here, Ann Kelly from our Program Management Office, and Anna Hoover. And we will go through the agenda and perhaps flag some items for further discussion. But Mary, I would love to hear your thoughts on any of the issues that arise. Again, the State Directors of Public Health Preparedness are meeting at their annual meeting this week, so I expect we've lost many members to that event for the day. So here is the agenda. I know I mailed it out yesterday, and it sounded like you had had a chance to look at it, so rather than go through all of those items again, let's just dive in. Were you able to attend the October 21st virtual event?
No, I was not. I think that's partly because I failed to actually put it on my calendar. So I got the email yesterday and said that it had been out and that it was going to be archived today. I was like, oh, great. And it's like, I wish I could have seen it before we had the call today, but I will check it out later, and obviously you'll have some highlights from it.
It is archived, and there's a link there, but let me go ahead and drop this link in the chat box really quickly. And then you can just copy and paste it into your browser, and you'll have it handy and won't have to wait for the slides to come out. It has been archived. We had 47 states represented with 215 individual viewers. I don't know if you can see Dr. Red there. Unfortunately, he was a little bit backlit. But, you know, in addition to the speakers from the Program Management Office and RWJF who sort of came along at the end, the session was moderated by Tom Inglesby, who is our NAC, our National Advisory Committee chair, and featured Dr. Red from CDC, Dr. Lorraine Asper, and John Weisman, the Secretary of Health in Washington State, who talked a little bit about the history of the index, where the index is, what kinds of things it can be used for at this stage, what kinds of things they'd like it long-term to start moving toward being used for. So it was an hour-long session. It was promoted widely in the weeks leading up through a variety of venues, preparedness newsletters, and other items. And I know that CDC helped promote it as well. So thanks for your help there, Mary. The nice thing is, as you know, what happens is people tend to log on to a webinar and listen for 10 or 15 minutes and decide if it's applicable for them and then just kind of peel away. So what was nice about this was that all of the viewers stayed for at least the first half of the webinar. So people may have had a meeting at 11:30. I don't have the numbers for how many dropped off at 11:30, but up until then we had the full viewership, which would have gotten through all of the presentations, if not the entire Q&A session. Questions were taken from Twitter as well as from the online meeting app, and they were addressed to a number to each of there were questions, I think, for each of the speakers over the course of the hour. So I hope you get a chance to listen to that, and if you have any thoughts on it, let us know. I believe the communications partner of RWJF, that organization is now fielding a survey of attendees to determine how well that platform worked and if it's going to be viable for doing additional events of this sort in the future. I've heard from a couple of folks. I know, for example, Kathy attended, and she thought it was a useful event and had good things to say about it. And then I heard from Laura with NACHO, who, as I said, is at the BPHP meeting, and she said she had been hearing quite a bit of good things about it from folks. So I told her when she got back from NACHO, we would need to debrief. When she got back from the BPHP meeting, and asked her, we would need to debrief because I really am interested to hear what she's hearing in the field. And I think someone just joined. Who joined us?
This is Doug Farquhar.
Hi, Doug. We were just getting started. It's you and Mary, a line host today. I think most of our other folks are at the State Directors of Public Health Preparedness meeting.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, their annual meeting is today. So we're just going through the agenda items one at a time. I was just saying that the event last Friday, and I know we talked yesterday, and you said you had an opportunity to attend. And I was
Right.
just saying that we had widespread attendance. We only missed 3 states in terms of attendees. We had 215 viewers, and they hung around for at least half of the webinar. Since you were on that call, Doug, did you have any thoughts you wanted to share about whether it was a useful event or if you've heard anything from others or how we could improve that kind of thing in the future?
No, I thought it was a very good event. It was gave a good overview of what you're trying to get across. I do think it's going to have to be repeated many times because you have a large audience you need to get this word out to, and it's just going to just require several dialogues and several forms of outreach on this.
Excellent. Thank you. Mary was not able to attend, but I want to see if Mary has any questions or anything you would like to discuss about the event, or ask us or ask Doug.
Just could you tell me again how many attendees there were? You mentioned that when you started discussing it, but I didn't quite catch it.
215 from 47 states in the District of Columbia. So our reach went beyond, I think very often historically with the index, it has reached the directors of public health preparedness at the state level, and that's kind of where we've been really done a good job of engaging historically, but haven't really managed to break out of that core group. And I think this indicates that we did manage to start cracking that ceiling just a little bit.
Well, that's great. And yeah, I without having listened to it yet, and I will do that. If I have any comments or thoughts about it, I can shoot those to you afterwards.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Moving along. As part of that registration process for that event, folks who had registered were emailed a link to a new video on how to use the index, which has also been archived on the home page. And this is a short 1.5 to 2-minute video that just walks the viewer through the steps of how do I find my state? How do I find the data within my state? What does foundational mean? What does data missing mean? All of those kinds of key, where can I download the raw data? All of that is included in that 1.5 to 2-minute use video. And as I said, that was sent out with the final confirmations just before the online webinar was held, and has been archived at the bottom of the homepage. So I've circled it here. I think on our last call I was able to share that they had just put up the resilience video, so it's right next to that resilience video. And if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that, I hope you will. And let us know if you think we've hit the marks there, or if there are additional areas we need to touch in any future videos or other kinds of materials, whether print or otherwise. All right, the blog. I was hoping that the blog would be live before we started the call. We talked to the communications folks yesterday. They have the copy. It's ready to go. They're just waiting for the web vendor to turn the switch on, and they said that could be a 48 to 72 hour turnaround. So I was kind of hoping we'd have it before we got on the call, but I checked about 20 minutes ago and it wasn't there yet. So the blog should be live this week, hopefully by the end of the day today, but certainly at some point this week the blog function on the home page will be live. The first blog is from the Program Management Office, and it's about Zika, big data, and health security and preparedness. Then the next blog to come after that will be a recap of that web event that we had on Friday, and it will contain links to the recording as well as to the use video. And then in mid-November, we have a number of blogs on deck. I think, and this could change, we're trying to be nimble. We already have a couple of drafts of different blogs in the hopper, and we have pretty much ready to go is this blog on equity, health security, and preparedness that looks at paid time off and high-speed internet access, looks at a couple of the measures within the index, to talk a little bit about distribution, geographic distribution, and equity issues as far as preparedness is concerned related to those two specific pieces. I think that will be the next one after the recap of the virtual event, but again, that could change if something high profile pops up. If you guys have specific blog ideas that you would like to see happen, or that you would like to write, or that you would like to recommend someone else write, please let us know, because this blog function, we're hoping, our goal is to have something new every couple of weeks. So about every 2 weeks have a new blog. So any thoughts on that would be appreciated. Do you guys have any suggestions at this stage?
Well, I can give you a wealth of suggestions. It's just, I think the big thing is just getting the blog read, and getting it out to your audience, and trying to flesh this out and highlight it. And, and the problem with that is, to do this, you need to be somewhat sensationalistic, which is not what we're trying to do. So I think it's just going to take a long effort to get the blog up, running, have people use it, and then getting it to advertise what it's trying to do.
Exactly. I think that's one of the reasons that we really wanted to start with Zika before the weather changes enough that Zika is completely off the radar now. For now,
well, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, that's why I say we're trying to be nimble. So that PTO blog might be the third blog, or it might be later. It to some extent, these blogs need to be responsive to, what are some high priority issues either in the news or being discussed in policy, or, what bills are pending before Congress or whatever, to really sort of tie index to as a tool for thinking about these other issues. So so please, anytime I give you the list of blogs, just know that it could change just a little bit depending on what appears to be in the news, not to be sensationalistic, as you point out, but to capitalize on the intersections with what is in the news.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to go. Are you going to have a blog or discussion group or something of just users?
We have talked about that in the past. Right now, I'm not sure that we have the capacity to manage that, because you would need some moderation probably, and we're not really staffed for it at the moment, but it is something we can discuss moving forward. I think that the communications firms that work with RWJF are working on their budgets right now, so it might be something that we could discuss in terms of how we might move something like that forward. It was something that came up very, very early in some of our first discussions 2 years ago when we were first talking about taking over the index, and it has not come to fruition yet. What would you recommend on that front?
No, I just think a blog is designed, if you make it an open source blog, everybody can tap into it. What you're trying to do is get people excited about the index. It's almost like a Twitter account. You need to keep saying all these things. Whereas if you want to do a discussion group of just, which could be a blog as well, but you limit your audience to just the users, which would be of course, the preparedness directors in the 50 states and some of your other contacts out there. And I was just thinking that might be a useful way to keep the communication going.
Excellent, thank you. All right, and I was just trying to look back and see if the blog is up yet, and it's still not there. I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like, because I'm honestly not sure at this point if it will have, for example, a comment section. So those are some issues that we need to work through with the communications folks. Because that would also provide an opportunity for folks to, if there were a comment section that would be moderated, I think it would need to be moderated, but if there were a comment section that folks could link to other pieces of information about preparedness or health security. One thing we really want to do is, to become, this website needs to become a more central node in the network of preparedness and health security, so that if someone's looking for something related, they feel like this is a resource they can go to and be pointed where they need to go. It can't be all things to all people, but if we can just better connect with those other pieces of the puzzle, I think we'll be going a long way toward getting the site used more and getting the pieces like blogs and videos used more. All right, I'm just going to move on and share with you guys that there is currently a discussion with the foundation and some documents are in review with foundation leadership and legal about a use competition. We've been back and forth, and for a variety of and we've changed some scope on this a few times because of particular legal concerns and other items. But as we have in the long term a hope to be able to better engage people around developing actual tools for the index. But on the timeline we're on, if we want to have anything ready for the 2017 index, we really need to change focus. So what we're looking for in this competition that is currently being reviewed at RWJF is stories of people using the index to make a difference, or stories of how people plan to use the index to make a difference. And we're hoping to be launching it in the next few weeks, again, after RWJF leadership and legal are good with it. And we're looking for really stories of index use in several areas: communicating about preparedness, convening stakeholders, identifying strengths and opportunities, developing priorities and plans, strengthening coordination, advocating for resources, providing some technical assistance to help folks understand their place in preparedness and health security, and monitoring progress, which we hope now that the index methodologically has reached a point where it can really be trended in that way, folks can begin using it in that way. Pretty broad criteria for submission. We're looking for essays, photos or videos, or all three, just to highlight how folks are using the index. And the prize right now in its current form relates to highlighting these stories, highlighting these activities on the website and in other promotional activities for the 2017 index release. So, for example, we might put a video about what happened on the website, or invite someone to speak at a 2017 launch event, or something like that. It's pretty diffuse right now, but we're working with the RWJF legal team to figure out what exactly we can offer here in terms of the competition. We're hoping to get off the ground in the next few weeks, because for us to generate stories that could be useful for the 2017 launch, we obviously need to wind it down by the end of January. So I wanted to share with you all that is hopefully coming. Again, it started as a much more targeted reach for folks to submit specific applications or plans to develop apps, or tools or dashboards or those kinds of things, but for various reasons, and including timeline and anytime you need to work through a lot of legal hoops, the timeline becomes an issue. So we could do those kinds of things, but we would be looking at a much further, much longer lead time for that. Did someone just join?
Hi, Anna. This is Kathy. I had a family situation come up. I couldn't get out here earlier. Sorry.
Hi, Kathy. Hope everything's okay.
Yeah, it will be.
Good. Well, we were just talking through it. It's Doug, Mary, and you today,
Okay.
with Ann and me. As you know, the DPH peer meeting this week, so we expected a pretty light turnout. And we were just talking through the use competition that is now being reviewed at RWJF, which is really designed to generate stories of use for the website and future promotions. I just wanted to stop there, and you can see if are you on the?
I am not.
We're looking at a timeline of launching in the next few weeks, launching this use competition in the next few weeks, and hopefully winding it down by the end of January. I was just going to stop now and see if Doug or Mary had any questions or thoughts to share about this proposed competition. All right. Hearing none, we'll move on. We'll keep you posted as it looks like this is going to roll out. I mean, ideally, we would have something tangible to promise people for submitting their stories, but again, that starts getting into when you provide anything of value, then legal has to get involved, and it stretches your timeline out tremendously. So we'll be looking at.
Are you going to be offering people? You're just offering them recognition?
Recognition right now, yes. Future iterations of such a competition would hopefully go beyond that in some way. But for this first year, given timelines, we're pretty much limited to the recognition piece. And what that recognition looks like, we're still working on. As I said, it might be we work with them to create a video highlighting their story that's shared on the website. We invite them to an event to speak about their experience, something like that. But we can't, legally, we can't offer money or something of value something that can be claimed to be of monetary value. So it's sort of a negotiation right now of what we can say and do.
Anna, how are you advertising it?
We'll be working with McCabe and those folks on the pushing it out. We'll be sharing it with all of the preparedness newsletters, obviously, with TIFA, with the other newsletters that we're aware of. We'll be pushing it out on Twitter. Hopefully we'll be able to get our folks for attending meetings. For example, the HPP meeting coming up at the end of the year or other meetings to share. We'll be pushing out via our listserv, and hopefully we can count on the folks on our work groups and our NAC and other folks who are engaged to share it with their friends. But we want to go beyond snowballing, so there will be some targeted work done by the McCabe folks.
You know, travel to share your story might be an incentive there if you did it with.
Yeah, it is, but it's not one we can put in writing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's one that we can say promotion. We can what's the language right now? Now highlighted through the website and other promotional activities, but we can't put we will travel you to this event in writing because that gets the lawyers nervous.
Gotcha.
Because that's something of monetary value, and then you have to go before the board, and then it's a whole thing. So while that may end up being what happens, it's not something we can put on paper for this iteration of this competition. I'm hoping that next year, having worked through this year and realizing what some of the potential hurdles are, we'll be able to address some of that and much earlier in the process and get to a place where we can say something tangible like that. But unfortunately, we're on, I think, draft 7 of this document right now. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to make some of those transitions in the next few iterations. But absolutely, I think travel would be important. I think if we did a launch event, this year as we were talking about release events, or as we were talking about the webinar last Friday, and planning for it, we really would have liked to have had stories to share. We would have liked to have been able to bring people in to tell their stories for either of those events. And unfortunately, we just didn't have the sort of Rolodex of stories that we need to do that. So this is an effort to begin building that Rolodex.
Right.
Kathy, I just thought since you had joined, I don't mean to backtrack, but I know you were on the call or on the webinar on Friday as well. Doug was on it. Mary was not able to attend, but is going to be watching it later. Are there any thoughts that you had on that you would like to share before we move on?
I thought it was well done. I enjoyed the different speakers. I thought Dr. Weissman from Washington did a great job from the public health angle in terms of really making it real.
Excellent. He's been a real asset on the National Advisory Committee.
Yeah.
He really has. And well, as you have other thoughts, and I appreciated the email you sent on Friday, and I was in a dean retreat, so I didn't get a chance to email you back. It was on the tip of my tongue, and then I forgot. But thank you for that. And Doug was saying we should continue doing such things often and through as many channels as possible.
Yep.
So we'll keep working to keep it front and center. It's also archived on the website now, and just to recap the numbers, we had 215 attendees from 47 states and the District of Columbia. All right, moving ahead, I just want to talk about, in addition to those kinds of promotional pieces and pieces explaining how to use the index and the video showing how to use the index, we're also hoping to support some targeted use of the index. So one of the first things we're looking at are subject matter expert meetings, and obviously these are potentially budget busters, so we can only do one or two a year, and we're going to have to be very targeted and strategic on where and how we do them. And Doug has been kind enough to agree to help us with this first one out of the gate that we're really excited about. And that's going to be a meeting of environmental and occupational health experts. We're looking at doing this meeting in January, and really what we hope to do is review and provide context for some of the index findings with all of these subject matter experts. And in the case of this particular group of people, as you can see from the graph on the bottom of your slide, which I borrowed from the executive summary this year, all of the domains are either moving forward or holding steady except for environmental and occupational health. And that's something that was brought out in the, as I said, in the executive summary. It's something that's been discussed in a lot of venues. I know, Kathy, you've been in some of those discussions. And the thought is that if we can bring together some subject matter experts, perhaps from NEHA, from ASTO, from NACHO, as well as some of the public or some of the environmental health personnel in states most implicated, so the ones that have seen perhaps the biggest drops or the biggest increase, then perhaps that will position us to get some context for what might be going on in this domain. So to get these people together to talk about what are the trends of interest and concern, really take a deep dive into the data and explore, if some areas are improving and some are declining, why are we seeing trends? And are there changes in policy or practice or even measurement of the index that might help account for some of these shifts that we're seeing? And if so, are there any implications? Can we make any suggestions about how to address declines or how to replicate improvements? So since environmental and occupational health was the domain this year that we saw sort of a decline in, that's going to be our first one out of the gate.
I know I've said this before, and Mike doesn't seem to make much of it, but and I do think there are significant issues in the country with environmental health, and there's no doubt in my mind with that. But I think we have to be careful interpreting our data there, because much of the reason it stayed steady was because it's the same data. There wasn't up-to-date data for the few measures that they happen to have between the last 2 years. We just have to be attuned to that, because people will come into that meeting with knowing that and looking at it if they've dug down into the data. If they haven't, then they won't notice it. But I think, to be honest and fair, that is part of the reason why it's steady state. Doesn't mean there's not environmental health issues in our country and occupational health issues in our country. There definitely are, and not that we definitely need to expand that domain and subdomains down. There's just not that many measures in them to capture the scope of them at all. But it's just going to be attuned to. I think there are data issues as well that have led to those results.
Exactly. That's why I have that measurement category in there as well, because are we even measuring the right things? Are there other things we need to be measuring? What can we be measuring? And that's going to involve getting, getting those subject matter experts at the table. The folks who are really in the weeds on, for example, environmental monitoring, which is one of the areas that, as we know, we saw some issues with. So what can we be doing both in terms of policy and practice and in terms of measurement to better capture what's going on and perhaps to begin addressing some of it. So that's sort of our first goal is to go with that environmental and occupational health experts. And they'll be getting the data, they'll be getting the raw data well in advance of the meeting. So that's something we really want to talk about. And I've been taking some slices through it myself and looking at, it's really interesting because some of our top, it's not uniform by any stretch of the imagination. Some of the states that are above average, some of the states that are gold overall have shown declines and dropped into the bottom tier just in this domain. They're gold everywhere else, but they're in the bottom tier for this one. And some of the states that are actually in the bottom tier nationally are among the top performers in environmental and occupational health. So, it may be partially a measurement and a data issue, and there may be some other things going on. So I think it's good to have these conversations and to try to get our arms around it, because and it also gives us an opportunity to introduce the index to perhaps a group of people who don't realize that it is there and is potentially a tool for them to be thinking about integrating into their sort of subsections of health security and preparedness, like the environmental monitoring piece. It also becomes a tool to not just to understand the index, but also to encourage use by different sectors and to encourage engagement with other groups as well. Are there other thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is Mary. I'd be curious to, not that I would personally know this, but it might be a good idea to look at the list of folks that you're looking at inviting, just in terms of, having relatively low index scores, and see if those states also represent states that tend to have a lot of environmental health crises and hazards and emergencies, because I think those would be important to include if they aren't already represented in that group, because states that deal with a lot of environmental hazards probably would have a lot to say about appropriate measures and how to address, some of these issues and use the index. So,
absolutely, thank you. And that's a list that Dave is taking a first cut through, and then we're going to have a look at next week and have conversation around if we've got some additional pieces we need to add to it. So that's very useful in helping us think through those issues. Interestingly, only one state showed an improvement of more than a point, and that was York. But we had some states that in the 3 years of the index have dropped by as many as 4 points or more. And
yeah, again, Anna, some of those, when I looked into it, that's because they didn't have the data 1 year and they had it next year. So it's just kind of, you got to be careful with interpreting those.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Other thoughts? Right. Well, I'll just let you know, I'll flag for you that some of the future subject matter expert meetings we may be looking into are in some of those areas we talked about last month as being priorities for expansion and enhancement of the index. So, for example, territories and municipalities. We had talked about, the goal of the index is to provide some different slices on health security and preparedness. So we had been looking at the urging of some of the public health preparedness folks in, for example, Puerto Rico, how we might be able to look at territories. Obviously, not all of the same metrics are available, so it would be a sort of complex undertaking. Same with, the larger cities, New York, LA, Chicago, DC, some of the larger cities in the country. So some of the future subject matter expert meetings might involve convening the stakeholders from those sectors or from those areas to really take deep dives into how and what that might look like. And if you have any ideas for other subject matter expert convenings that either explore the index in a meaningful way, bring you constituencies to the index to help them think through how and where it relates to them, those kinds of pieces, please let us know. Do you have any, I hate to put you on the spot, but do you have any thoughts today, for example? And if not, feel free to email us. And again, this is going to be a one to two a year is probably all we're going to be able to budget for on these. But I'm trying to get a sort of wish list of what we'd like to see happen.
The only thought I have on them is, and I think I heard you saying this. You kind of can do two things at once. If you're trying to move into territory and or large city, you could use the opportunity to really discuss other measures they might have available or which ones are the most relevant to them for shaping the index along their, for that level of jurisdiction, while you also do some cross-sharing of ideas and use and that.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
This is Mary. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, looking at this list regarding territories and municipalities, I'm thinking it would be nice to also add tribal nations and possibly, geographically isolated or rural areas. If there's some way to do that, it might just be a helpful way to flesh out the range of perspectives that get brought to the table.
Yeah, there's been a lot of interest in doing tribal nation issues, and that would be great.
Excellent.
I think that's interesting about combining rural jurisdictions and sessions around these. That was an area that people talked about. If they could do kind of like jurisdictions, it would be helpful. Have those discussions about quality improvement.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much. As you think of others, by all means, give us a call. We don't have to wait until the fourth Tuesday of the month to have these conversations if you have additional thoughts on any of these items. I did want to let you know that the call for measures has been extended through October 28th. An email went out to the listserv yesterday reminding them of this. There is a button on the home page that says Suggest New Measures. Takes you to this little description right below it. It's a little description page of the call for measures, and then clicking there will link on out to the form. So if you're aware of anyone who somehow has missed the open call for measures for the last, I think we're knocking on the door of a month, please let them know, or who intended to submit something but maybe hasn't gone around to it. Please let them know that we've extended through the end of this week, but we do have to cut off then because after the end of this week, we have just a few days to put together a document for public comment that we're hoping to launch in mid-November. And it should be a far less onerous list to review than the one last year, because there were such large-scale methodological changes, such a large number of measures that were affected, and it was a very large document, and I know folks were concerned about the heavy list, but this year there are far fewer recommendations. I think the last time I checked the measures submission process, I think 5 had been recommended, 5 changes had been recommended, but it may have increased since, and this has been about a week and a half ago. So I think we were at 5 then. Methodologically, I don't think a whole lot of changes are coming. I think that the methodology work group has had a couple of ideas that they're still exploring, and I'm not sure where they've landed on those, but much smaller in scale and scope and number than last year. So I don't think that document is going to look anything like what it did last year. Which I think most people will be relieved to hear, because it was a very large document because we needed to go through measure by measure. But once that was released last year, we did have a public comment period. Because of the size and scale of the changes that had been recommended last year, we actually had a couple of additional webinars to walk people through the document and answer questions that they might have about it. But at the National Advisory Committee meeting that followed that public comment period, we actually went through each of the comments we received on a measure-by-measure basis and on an item-by-item basis. So we anticipate doing the same this year. That said, we know some of the standard ways we're planning to push out information about the public comment period and let folks know that the document is online and we really would like feedback. But I just wanted to ask this group if you have additional suggestions. We know, for example, that we'll be doing a mailing to our listserv. We'll have an additional website button, where that suggest measures is. We'll be comment on proposed changes. We'll hit all the newsletters that we've been hitting, but I wanted to see if you guys had any additional recommendations for how we can make sure that there is a high level of awareness for that public comment period, generating as much feedback as possible.
I have several thoughts on that, and I don't know if I want to, to what extent I want to, use your time today, but I think there are several opportunities out there that we need to hit on from the state environmental health side, and then the state preparedness side to make sure they, you kind of have to get your partners on board first before going out to the public. And I think if we can, utilize some time on doing a few webinars or a few phone and, video type outreach, I think that would be a good way to start.
Excellent. Thanks, Doug. Any other thoughts right now, or would folks just prefer to email me your thoughts later on?
Yeah, that might be good, something good to chew on. So if you want to maybe just send us a follow-up email and ask for our input, and for the rest of the folks that didn't make it onto this call, that probably would be good.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll send it out with the slides here after a while.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Making a note to myself, sorry. All right. Moving along. And this, this is something that we can discuss now. We can also sort of table this discussion. It's going to be an ongoing one. The budgets are being developed, as I think I mentioned at the top of the call, for the communication partners for RWJS for the coming year. So once those are approved, we're going to be sort of limited in scope for what we can do in a 12-month period in terms of tool development. But there's no reason we just need to think in the short-term window. It would be nice to think about in the long-term windows what kinds of visualizations, dashboards, other kinds of tools might be useful for folks. But in order to figure that out, in order to really get a slice, and this may go back to what Doug was just talking about webinars and calls with specific constituencies, we really need to think about who are the people best positioned to tell us for their constituency or their particular stake in the work of the index. What would make their jobs easier? What could the index do? How could we provide visualizations or descriptions or crosswalks or whatever of the index that really informs their daily work? And that may be, as Doug mentioned, environmental health. That may be health care. That may be a variety of people. But we need to be thinking about, and whether it's focus groups or surveys or what, we need to be really thinking about reaching out to some of these specific constituencies and figuring out what they need so we can start working on these visualizations and dashboards. So I'm just wondering, what suggestions do you guys have? We can't be, the index has a lot of stakeholders in a lot of different arenas, and not all of them see themselves in it yet. But at the same time, we can't be everything to all people. So what are some of the best ways that you can think of to help prioritize some of those groups and then connect with the right folks? I mean, to get their feedback on what would make the index more useful to them. And I think, I think of emergency management, I think of healthcare, I think of a variety of groups I'm sure you guys also think of.
Anna, this is Kathy. I think you've got a lot of feedback from this group at 1.2. The website and the visualizations really could use a lot of work. I know you've had frustrations with the visualization website, and I think there are tools that we're not making available and displays that we're not making available, whether it be the data, like the subdomain data, or the ability to look across the index and print out a page that really captures visually how you compare to the rest of the country or other or national results or that kind of thing, and what your results are on a page. I mean, you can find everything, you can scroll, but it just doesn't. It's not readily made to print off and use with a group of partners to have discussion and guide discussion around it, or to draw you into really exploring it further. And I just think there could be some better visualizations on there.
Thanks, Kathy. And that's something that we have been talking about as well. I mean, even if only in the next year, if only expanding to include a state page of infographics and some of the dashboards that went out with the data when folks, with the data preview, for example, with the spreadsheet, that you could pull up a dashboard and see the trend line for this or that domain and those kinds of, for a given state, and those kinds of things. I think those are going to be really essential. Absolutely. Did someone join us, or did someone need to log off? Thought I heard a beep. Okay, we probably lost.
I think maybe somebody.
Yeah, that's what I expected at this point in the call. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And we've had some conversations about potential visualizations for next year. But we, some of the graphs, some of the kinds of dashboards we're talking about. But I'm wondering more outside of the box, sort of outside of some of the items that we've already raised. Are there slices that will be of specific interest to healthcare preparedness folks, or to emergency managers that we might not necessarily think of from our perspective? Obviously, we have these bigger issues. I mean, I would like to see trend lines within the domains as well as across the states, and there are a lot of things that I think we'd all like to be able to see at a glance that we don't yet. Couldn't agree with that more. But in terms of connecting to some of those other constituencies, so we can learn maybe what we don't. I'm interested in hearing from folks who have a completely different perspective and may really be able to tell us something that we don't even know we don't know yet. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Because I know that there are visualizations that are missing from that website. I know that there are some graphs that need to be there, and I know that we need this infographic, this state summary page desperately for next year. I couldn't agree with you more.
And I think it's good to go ask those questions and look for those out-of-the-box things, and that's great, but I wouldn't hold off on improving what you've got based on the feedback you've already gotten.
No, not at all.
If you're really trying to
that's why this says and that's why the slide is for 2015, or for 2017. I have apparently regressed 2 years. I don't know how I did that, but developing tools for 2017 and beyond. The part we're starting to talk about right now with connecting to some of these other constituencies is the and beyond, because some of these changes we're talking about, I'm hoping we're going to see in the next iteration of the index. But if we're going to be making changes in 2018 or 2019, how the index looks and what kinds of tools are available, we have to start some of that groundwork now, unfortunately, because there's a long lead time on budget development for those kinds of things. but yeah, we have had conversations with McCabe and given them a list of things, and many of the things you've already mentioned are on that list of things we want to see next year. Any other thoughts? This is something I can throw back out as a question in the email as well and ask folks for ideas on how to connect to some of these other groups. I think we have maybe also some holes in our work group that we can think about filling too that could help in some of these areas. We have some sectors that are represented in name but aren't really represented in high levels of participation that perhaps we can look at adding some additional folks from those sectors. All right, just a couple of additional items to cover in terms of other business, and then I'll open the floor for discussion. A virtual meeting platform, I think we've mentioned before that the university's contract with Adobe Connect ends at the end of this month. We have spent the last few months exploring some different options available to us. Without getting too in the weeds, the new platform that the university has moved to has some issues related to toll numbers. We don't want people to have to spend money to call into these calls, so we're trying to resolve that. We also have an issue of right now we have a standing meeting room with Adobe Connect, so we have this sort of standard hyperlink that no matter what you can always dial into, but with a new platform it's likely to change every month. We're likely to have a new meeting room every month, and so we're still finalizing the plans for transitioning to a new meeting platform, and we'll be sending you in advance of the next call some detailed instructions about accessing the new meeting platform. And I apologize for needing to learn a new one, a new platform, but it's just one of those things that it looks like it's going to be necessary for all of us. It's probably going to be Zoom. If you're familiar with Zoom, that is actually the platform that was used for last Friday's webinar call. It's likely that we'll be using that. But again, we're just trying to resolve some issues to make sure that you aren't having to pay to call into these meetings, because that's you're volunteers, you're sharing your time and expertise with us, and that's just not something that we want to do to you. The next item is the November and December meetings. I am assuming that we are all fine with canceling the December meeting, since the fourth week will be the week of the holidays, when I imagine a lot of people on this call will be off of work, and at least one of us is going to be in Chicago to see Hamilton. So if we're okay with canceling that December meeting, the other issue is November. The 4th, I was looking at the calendar, and the 4th Tuesday in November is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. I'll be at work. I'm assuming we might not have everyone, but you know, we had low attendance today because of the conflict with the DPHP meeting, so I think if we can get, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 people on the call, it will definitely be worth our time. Are there any thoughts? Are there any suggestions about moving or canceling November, or are we okay with just going forward with it?
What's the date again?
It is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, which is November the 22nd, I think. 1 second. Yes, it's November the 22nd.
Okay. Yeah, I know I'll be on vacation that day, so.
I thought a lot of people might, but
yeah.
I'm around. Fine.
You're around? Well, let's try to go forward with that November call and continue the discussions that we've been having, and if we have a low attendance, then we'll just chat for a little bit and then move on. But hopefully some folks will be able to join us. And I hate to cancel 2 meetings in a row. And again, the December meeting falling as it does on December the 19th, the beginning of that week, I'm guessing a lot of folks are going to be gone. I guess we could send around an email and ask folks if they're going to be around that week as well before we make a final call on canceling December. So we can ask that in the email as well that we'll send out following this meeting with the slides. Just ask folks if they're okay with going ahead with the November and December meetings, or if we're going to have anyone attend. All right. Are there other items we need to discuss? I see we're at time, and I did not mean to get to time without giving folks a chance to raise other issues.
Just that we'll do some follow-up to the stakeholder meeting, and without having any conference calls between now and then, it might cause an issue for us or not.
Right. I think we probably will. I'm hoping that we'll be able to move forward and go ahead and have at least one of those calls.
Okay.
But hopefully both, because we might still have people on November the 9th or November the 19th, 20th, right in there. All right, just a quick reminder of our production timeline. This is the working timeline. This is what we anticipate will happen. As you know, we could get to March, and my understanding is that, for example, county health rankings roll out at the end of March, or are scheduled to roll out at the end of March, and we ran up against that last year, and there was some concern about us stepping on each other, so the launch dates were moved a little bit to get some separation there. But as of right now, this is still our working timeline. I'll let you know if it looks like anything's changing. We're just winding down that call for measures. Public comments next month, probably starting mid-month and carrying through to the holiday. Final index calculations and the National Advisory Committee meeting to review those will be in January. I believe it's inauguration week in Baltimore. And then preliminary results to the stakeholders in February, some time for them to review, with an anticipated March release and promotion thereafter. We do have an abstract into the summit for a panel in April, which will be hot on the heels of the release. So hopefully that will all go well. I'll keep you posted on if it goes through, and if so, when and where you can find that session. And then we're hoping to be able to schedule a hot wash of the index release within a few weeks after the release. Last year, it took us about 6 months out to schedule that meeting. We started a few months before the index release, and the soonest we could get that meeting was August. So we're going to start trying to schedule that almost immediately to make sure that we can get those folks together. As you can imagine, with that group, it's difficult to get the calendars all aligned, or even a quorum aligned.
Hey, Anna, one thought with the hot wash next year. I know really it was done pretty much through the modeling groups. You might want to, I often found in the past that it's really helpful to combine your communications and your modeling folks when you're doing that kind of planning and hot washing kind of things. You may want to think about doing them together. I don't know.
Excellent. Thank you. See if we can have a joint meeting of all of the work groups plus the communications team. Absolutely. That's a great suggestion. Thank you, Kathy. Any other thoughts on any of this in the timeline? And again, we know that there is potentially some overlap with the SEP renewals. We've tried to start telegraphing that. I believe Mike mentioned that he spoke to the ASTO DPHP group last month and started signaling that the beginning of this month, actually. And we'll take every opportunity to remind folks that that's coming, but that hopefully there will still be an opportunity for folks to have the time they need to review the data. Open work group meetings, just a reminder that the next virtual meeting for us is November 22nd. And the next meeting of the Analytic Methodology and Model Design, which is now, as you know, a merged work group, is the third Tuesday of the month. So we're a couple weeks out from that. The login information and archive slide recordings can be found at the tools-resources page on the NHSPI website, and that's going to be even more important if, in fact, we find that the new web platform is going to require us to change meeting room URLs every month. So just a reminder that is there. Not all of the recordings are there right now because with the transition, we are having to convert all of our old recordings from Adobe Connect into a universal video file that can be accessed regardless of whether you have Adobe Connect or we have Adobe Connect or not. So not all the recordings are there right now. We're working on getting those all transitioned over. Any questions about any of that? All right. As I mentioned last month, Ann Kelly has joined our team. Her email address is on here along with all of ours. Thank you guys so much for spending your time today with us on this call. And please feel free to call or email with any thoughts you have between now and the next meeting. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.